Alright, what's up guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. And I kind of had these thoughts in my mind that I'm about to share right now, and I feel like expressing it because, well, it's a time to do so. And I feel like the revolution has begun. For probably the past 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, 2 or 3 years, I've kind of had this idea of a revolution happening and needing to happen based on the direction that things are going. And based on what I've been seeing on the internet and, seeing like in my life, in my daily life, and how I've been feeling, I feel like the shift is now finally starting for a revolution. We have to start at this point a revolution, and I think it's possible. I think the change is possible. It's already happening, and for a lot of reasons, there's a lot of reasons why we need to have this revolution. And basically, it's what I said, right? The direction of where things are going, things are no longer sustainable. The system is no longer sustainable, and we need a complete renovation of a new system. A system that is more aligned with nature, a system that is healthier, that actually cares for its beings, a system that can be sustainable in the long run. And for a revolution to happen, things first probably need to collapse so that, things can get rebuilt from scratch. And based on where things look like they're going, it seems like things are going to collapse. Um, Seeing the things with the war and the war with Iran and the U.S., it's just unbelievable. And it seems like the U.S. is just going to keep going with this war, even though there is no, need for it at all. And it's only because, of course, of Israel and the U.S. kind of being by Israel's nutsacks and just being controlled by them. Then you have, there's so many things, so many reasons going on. But also today I saw things on data centers, and I watched this Moist Critical video on him talking about how somebody's home in Georgia got taken away because the Georgia Power Company decided to take away this person's house or buy it off of them, basically force them to sell their house even though they didn't want to. They stayed in that home for many years and were planning to do that. But because of this data center in Georgia, it needed more power, and apparently that house was in the way of one of the electrical lines going through it. Uh, Georgia, the Georgia company, the Georgia Power Company, felt like they had to buy it off of them and enforce them basically to sell their house. And to me, this is just a big indication of, to be honest, a revolution. Why is that? Well, when it gets to the point where the government is forcing you to sell your home because of data centers that are solely for artificial intelligence, that is a big red flag, right? If we think about where artificial intelligence is going in the future, it's going to take everybody's job, right? And all the billionaires, the elite class, are just shoving money into these data centers. And what are these data centers doing? They're taking a whole lot of space, a whole load of power. They're ruining infrastructure in cities. And, we're seeing now that they don't even care. They're willing to take people's homes. And here's the thing, right? When a revolution happens, and this is just sort of what my understanding and my feeling is that people have to be really mad. People have to be pushed to their limits. And once the government is forcing you to sell your home, like you are, that's the line right there. That's the boundary. That's somebody's safety. That's somebody's life. Like you're touching their core. You're going into like their home. They're literally their safe place where they belong, and you are stripping that away from them. When that starts to happen, when people's rights, human rights, start to get violated, that's when a revolution starts. And seeing that video was uploaded today, seeing that, honestly, again confirm this in my head after, where all the trends seem to be going. But especially seeing that, I was like, dude, no, that is unacceptable. Imagine your home that you love, that you work so hard to live in, to buy, to find, to curate, to have a family in, to have memories in that home, for your kids to grow up there so they can have, neighborhood friends, and, have a safe place to where they can grow up. Imagine that just being stripped away because of something that is ultimately not even going to benefit you, right? And of course, there's the arguments you can make for artificial intelligence and being beneficial in the long run or even now, etc. Right now, that is not outweighing what's happening, what happened in that situation, right? Somebody's home being taken away. I promise you, if that was you, you would not give a damn. You're going to stay in that house if it's a home that is meaningful to you. So for me, once that violation happens, it's like that's it. You're violating human rights. You're violating people completely, not looking at them like humans, like beings. And that's when revolution starts. That's when revolution is necessary. Because if we don't do anything, things are just going to get worse. Things are already just going to get worse. So now is the time, especially this US, right, and Iran war. It's going to keep going worse. It's going to escalate. They're going to send ground troops. They're going to start getting younger males to go into war. Again, reasons for revolution, because there's going to be a bunch of young adult males that don't want to go into this war because they know it's ultimately for Israel. It has nothing to do ultimately with the US, and the US is doing it just out of greed, fear, and because they're controlled by Israel, and because it's all corruption. So that right there is already a lot of conflict, and that's going to start a lot of revolution. Plus, you have these data centers. Then you have artificial intelligence, again, going to be taking a lot of jobs. What happens then, right? When a lot of the workforce is unemployed because these new systems are taking jobs, which I think in the long run will be good. But again, for right now, that's a part of the revolution, right? Things are dramatically changing. And if we think about, if AI continues to advance and it ends up being the thing that, we imagine, like have it imagined in our minds, then we're going to need a revolution because life's going to look completely different. And so I think the revolution has started. We need to start the revolution. Things cannot keep going the way they're going. People are suffering across the world. And I think the where the revolution is going to matter the most is going to be in the US, because of course the US controls the global economy. It's, at its core. So if a revolution can happen in the US, the whole world is changing. And again, I think the way the state and where things are at seems to be like a lot of people are going through changes, through transitions, and that there's a lot of people that want change and are desperately seeking that change. And in order for that to happen, again, there needs to be a revolution. So, and one more thing for this revolution thing, because I think it's something that's going to start popping up in a lot of people's minds, and people are going to start, there's going to be a movement. People are going to start making movements for it. But one more thing for this revolution thing is that we have to stop being pessimistic. Change is possible. We are extremely powerful. And we forget this, but we have all the power. The only thing limiting ourselves is our mind, right? That's the whole fucking trick. That's the whole illusion. These people on top basically condition our minds to keep us in a prison, to make us believe certain limitations about ourselves, to make us believe a certain reality that keeps us within four walls, within a prison, within our own mind. But the thing is, we have the power, the ability to examine our own minds and release ourselves of that prison, of those false beliefs, and try to seek and get closer towards truth. And I see that happening. A lot of people are starting to awaken, and I think the awakening is accelerating, and again, is connected to this revolution. And as more people awaken, the more people will move towards revolution because it is the right way to go if you're conscious and you can see what's going on. But again, we cannot be pessimistic. Realize that pessimism comes from the mental conditioning that they've done to your mind, to the propaganda, to the school system that has all conditioned your mind to make you weak, to sedate you, to seduce you, to take the primal and the drive out of you, to take your life away from you, because this system is not aligned with nature. It is not sustainable. But at some point, we all usually suffering or some sort of loss is what creates the change or the revolution within somebody. And so at some point it's going to happen to almost everyone where they will have so much suffering or loss that they are forced to change and have an awakening within themselves. And it's happening to a lot of people, and it's going to continue happening, and it's going to keep happening so that the revolution can happen. But again, we have to realize that pessimism, 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 yeah, I think that's how you say it, whatever, you got what I'm saying. Being pessimistic is not the right approach for change, clearly, and it's not even close to the truth, right? It doesn't even make sense. Again, it's just your mental conditioning. We need to be optimistic. We can make change. It is possible, and it needs to happen because we've already gone through so much suffering, our own generation, where we have to save the generations of the future. We have to save the youth, because if nothing changes, the amount of suffering in those future generations is going to be 1,000 times worse than the suffering our generation has if it keeps going down this direction. So we have a responsibility as a generation to change things, right? Things need to change. And the thing is, it's so possible with the technology we have now that it is so possible. You can learn literally anything on the internet. You can communicate with literally anybody on the globe. And so it's just a matter of not letting that pessimism, that mental conditioning, those false beliefs, those false limitations dictate, how you move through life and make you believe that you don't have power. We are the people. We have the power. We can change things. It's a matter of making a choice and being aware and continuing day by day trying to make better choices and trying to be a better person. But if we fall into that pessimism and give in, then things will never change. So try to remain as optimistic as you can. Try to see the good in people no matter how hard it is. That's what we need to do. We need to come together because that's when we're the strongest, right? When we come together. And at that point, nothing could stop. If you got a group of people that are living in the truth and are constantly seeking the truth, and they work together towards making change, nothing is stopping that. No matter how rich and no matter how greedy or whatever or fear mongering these people are, nothing is stopping a group of people who are living in truth. And of course, with love. Those things, truth, love, those things will be the most powerful things, and those are things that are going to change the world. So anyways, I have clearly a lot on my mind. I just want to spew some of it out just because I felt like sharing it, and I feel like now is the time, and we need to start kind of spreading this message and start being more optimistic and realize that change is possible. And once we start being more optimistic and realizing the truth that the change is possible, then we can start trying to figure out ways on how to, make this change happen. That needs to happen, right? All right, so that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video or took some value out of it. I don't know, but I love you all. Thanks for watching. May God bless you all, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, y'all.